to Krown Countdown U. My name's Ryan Sullivan. His name's Andrew Wadden. You got a plane to catch here.
Yeah, I got a plane to catch. I'm going to France, so let's speed this thing up here.
All right, well, just take it easy. We're gonna go a little quick and.
Yeah, you just, like I said, you want to hurry things up, get to the highlights. I got a plane to catch. Going to France.
You gotta get the language.
Allons-y!
There it is. It's finally here, ladies and gentlemen. The 50th Vanier Cup, the biggest game in Canadian collegiate sports. The biggest event on our agenda, the biggest thing to hit Montreal since that UP Morgana sex scandal of 1988. Mac's third Vanier appearance in 4 years, Montreal's first in program history. Will Steph Potasic take a Gatorade shower, or will Danny Machocha run onto the field and twirl before the game is over? Again, let's find out. Welcome to the Purse, ladies and gentlemen. Percival Molson Memorial Stadium, the Montreal Caravan. Thanks to the standings, we're not the home team in this one, but really, who are we kidding? Yes, they were. They were taking on Marshall Ferguson and the Mac Marauders. After a Caravan 2-and-out to start the game, Ferguson puts up a floater and finds Max Cameron with an unreal grab down the sideline, giving the Mac offense some cushy field position. They could not capitalize, however, so in comes Tyler Capina, and the best kicker in league history puts the first points on the board. After another Montreal 2-and-out, Ferguson forces one up down the sideline. That's ruled a pick by Anthony Cody. Upon further review, his legs, they come down out of bounds. Nonetheless, it's still blue ball. With that possession, the Mac D again comes up huge as Jonathan Nagleka picks up one of his 3 sacks this postseason, one of Mac's 6 sacks on the day. After a switch of possession, what could Mac do? Well, Ferguson finds Cameron down the sideline. He then gives a little flip pass to Danny van der Voort for 8 yards, and he then hits Ben O'Connor. No! It's the Vanier Cup, brother. Get those hands working, make that catch. It would result in another Tyler Capina triple, and we're looking at a 6-0 scoreboard to end the first quarter.
I'm not on vacation yet, Ryan. Let me get in there. Second cue, Montreal marching. Gabriel Cousineau to Regis Sibassou. He juggles the leather, puts the Caravan deep in Mac's zone. However, they could only muster a 3-banger out of it. Mac lead now cut in half. That wouldn't last long. Next Mac possession, Wayne Moore goes off. He majors in art history, and that run was both artistic and will go down in the history books. Mac ups its lead to 10. Next possession for them, Moore takes a low hit right in the ditka. Pigskin pops loose, MTL recovers. The junior would leave the game, but Montreal would do nothing with the turnover, so we head into the halftime with Mac up 13-3.
After a brief exit in the second cue with a suspected lower body injury, Wayne Moore returns for the second half. The crowd ready to rock, and Mac getting the first chance to strike. However, on the kick return, the rock slips loose right out of the tiger grip of Isaiah Mells. Montreal recovers, and the momentum pendulum swings towards the blue. Cousineau's third toss of the drive, he hits Mikkel Davidson. His fourth toss, he hits Mikkel Davidson. Then his fifth toss finds Philippe Anchille, and Montreal has their first touchdown of the day. The hometown crowd going absolutely nuts. The collegiate crowd not really getting a chance to cheer at McGill this year. There were definitely noise complaints on this day, though. It's 13-10 Mac. Mac right back. Marshall Ferguson hits Danny van der Voort, who then snipes Dallin Brooks for a first down. A nice little dose of trickery. Ferguson then goes to Wayne Moore for a pickup of 7 yards. Enter Tyler Capina, and while it wasn't the sexiest lead in football, another field goal hits the board, and the Marauders go up by 6. A few possessions later, and Ferguson looking deep for Mells, and nothing doing. No laundry hits the field. It looked like a bit of contact. Nothing happening. Ferguson on second, then doinks the upright next to the Rouge. That's got to be the most Canadian football play on earth. It would result in another Tyler Capina triple, and Mac led by 9 after 3 quarters.
So to the fourth we go, and it doesn't start out right for Ferguson. He looks sideline, but not one maroon jersey is in sight. Cody comes down with the pick. This one, however, is truly legit as he gets both feet in bounds. Cousineau and Sibassou then would go to work. The freshman makes an unreal grab. The defender draped all over him. That leads to this 3-yard major from Sean Thomas Erlington. Mac lead now just down to 2. A few minutes later, Cousineau from his own 39 connects with Mikkel Davidson, who plays a little leapfrog with the defender. First down, MTL. 2 plays later, Sibasu with the reception and yet another first down. Very next play, Philippe Anchil makes the grab, and you guessed it, another first down. Next play, it's Sibasu once again, but after driving 65 yards on 9 plays, they only get 3 out of it. Montreal is now in the lead for the first time in the game. Just over 2 minutes to go, Mac goes back to Moore. He takes it 24 yards to the Montreal 33, well within Crapina's range. They get it down to 3rd and inches. Mac decides to go to the most prolific kicker in CIS history instead of going for it. After already hitting 4 field goals on the day with the game on his foot.
Snap is good, and the kick is blocked. The kick is blocked by Montreal, and the Canadiens are 51 seconds away from their first Vanier Cup title.
Oh my goodness, can you believe that? Mathieu Girard somehow gets his body on the ball. Was it shanked? Was it blocked? That's irrelevant, as it didn't go through the uprights. Montreal is now less than a minute away from its first Vanier Cup title, but they would need to get at least 1 more first down. So on 3rd and inches from their own 33, they go for it.
On the line, Cousineau, did he get it? Did he get it? First down, Canadiens.
Danny Machocha can feel it now, and he feels this, the Gatorade shower for the first head coach to win both a Grey Cup and a Vanier Cup. The Ted Morris Award goes to Sibasu, while Anthony Cody won the Ted Coulter. Then it was time to host the big one. Montreal wins its first Vanier Cup in school history, narrowly escaping with a 20-19 victory. In what will surely go down as one of the greatest finishes in Vanier Cup history, what a way to finish what was a spectacular CIS football season. Both QBs put in great performances in the game, while Sibasu made every scout turn their head with what was a dynamic performance from the first-year receiver. Well, that's a wrap for the 2014 campaign, and what a final game it was to cap off this fantastic season.
Well, I guess Andrew's gone.
Au revoir, mon ami.
We're going to go to break, come back with the round table. All by myself, don't want to be all by myself.
Here's a look at the CIS 2014 award winners. And here's the list of the 2014 CIS First Team All-Canadians.
All right, it's time for the roundtable portion. Back here on Krown Countdown, you have Jim Mullen on the far side, Gord Randall in the middle, and live from the airport in Richmond, BC, we have Andrew Wadden waiting for his plane to France. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you very much for taking your time out there. Let's start things out with the first half of this football game, because everybody, I don't say everybody, but a lot of people thought, you know, Montreal, they're a tougher team. They're going to cakewalk unless McMaster comes out with a perfect game. And they came out looking very sharp on D. Jim, let's start with you.
Well, I think Greg Knox gets a lot of credit, the defensive coordinator for Mac, in terms of the blitz packages that he put forward. Jesse Lumsden talked a bit about that in last week's show in the roundtable, and I think he was spot on about it. I don't think in Quebec they saw a lot of this during the course of the year. Quebec is more physical and less inventive when it comes to attacking the quarterback. I also thought that on the offensive side of the ball for Mac, and I would have stuck with it a little bit longer, that power run with the pulling guards that they used more on was just fantastic. They could have even used it in the second half, I think, when they were plowing down towards that field goal attempt. But some of the looks that Mac gave Montreal were very well executed, and I think a big surprise to the Quebec side.
Yeah, I mean, it was mentioned on the show, as you said, that they were going to bring pressure all day, as they had all year, and they were able to get in the face of Gabby Cousineau and throw him off his game a little bit. And as is usually the case in championship games, there was a pretty lengthy feeling out process between these two teams. Definitely coaches playing the cards close to the vest for a while there, but we saw a theme start to develop in the first quarter, which was Mac stalling in the red zone. And that, I think, ultimately was their undoing. I mean, the field goal at the end of the game, not to jump ahead too far, but the field goal at the end of the game ends up would have been the 5th field goal of the day for Tyler Krupina. He'd already hit 4. If any one of those is a 6 instead of a 3, it's a McMaster victory.
Kind of like the other Hamilton team that played on the weekend, too, in terms of too many field goals and not enough TDs.
Yeah, that's fair. Now, Andrew, speaking of Hamilton's teams, I made 2 bets this week that didn't pan out well for me. Were you getting a little worried, though, about your investment in the Montreal Caravan in that first half?
I mean, a little bit. I figured that the offense would find itself at some point in the game, and they did. I think when they went into the locker room at halftime, they really went, okay, what are we doing here? What are we doing wrong? And what can we do to stop this MAC defense? That really was the MVP of the game up until that point. But once Gabriel Cousineau and the boys kind of figured out things, and they're able to roll down and able to break apart that MAC D and get themselves some points on the board, I was very confident. I think I tweeted at one point that you could feel the momentum shifting all the way out to where I was on my couch in Vancouver towards Montreal. And of course, in the end, they were able to figure it out. But the boys are right. If MAC had been able to get more points in the red zone as opposed to just those 3 bangers that they were hitting, that would have been McMaster's game.
Now, let's go to the second half. Jim, what stood out to you?
The one thing that stood out to me was the ability of Montreal to rally back and keep their focus and really shift the momentum. And shifting momentum was so important in that stadium, in that Mac did a great job of taking the crowd out of it. But once you got that crowd motivated, and I think we might talk a bit about that a little bit, they were a pretty motivated crowd. I think things really started to add up for them. Regis Sibasu, I was sitting with CFL scouts, not in the press box, and when he made that one catch, everybody was scrambling to see what year of eligibility he was in, and we're all quite fortunate in CIS in that he's a freshman, so he's going to be around for a while. That was one heck of a snag.
Gord.
Yeah, it's always very impressive when freshmen show up at the highest level. We talked about Mac's defense at length. I want to talk a little bit about Montreal's defense, and yes, they weren't the pressure kind of defense that Mac was bringing, but they did some really good stuff in the secondary, and we got a chance to talk to Marshall Ferguson on Saturday night, and he talked at length about how they baited him into both of those interceptions that he threw by disguising their coverage, deliberately leaving a look open that they knew that Mac liked to exploit, and then jumping on it when he put the ball in the air. And I mean, Byron Archambault wasn't as much of a factor in this game as he was in the previous 2, but at the same time, they managed to do just enough to win. One of my favorite stats of the game is that Gerard, the guy that blocked the kick at the end, he recorded, I think, 1 tackle all day. Like he did nothing all day, and then made the biggest play at the end of the game.
I didn't see anything too complicated from that Montreal front 7, though. It was all about muscle and power.
Yep.
Even when they brought 5, I didn't even see a twist or a shift or anything like that. It was straight ahead. There may have been some imagination on the backside in the secondary, but it wasn't up front.
All right, Andrew, and now before we get to the field goal heard around the world, because that's the next question we have here, what do you attribute the Montreal turnaround to in that second half?
I think it was just game planning, really. And I found that going into halftime, it didn't really look to me like the Caravans were all that nervous that they could turn things around. I think they went in there, I think they game planned correctly. And, maybe Cousineau just shook off the rust or maybe the jitters of that first half, playing in front of what basically was the hometown crowd. I mean, I know it was played at McGill, but I mean, let's face it, how many of those trapper hats were blue out there and not maroon, because there was tons of them. But I think they came in, they game planned correctly, and they were able to go out and really take control of the game. And props to Gabriel Cousineau and the offensive coordinator for the Caravans, because they really did a fantastic job of going back out and really breaking down the McMaster defense that was fantastic in that first half.
All right, now, Gord, let's get right into the field goal try here that was blocked. Put yourself in Steph Potasic's shoes. You put out the best kicker in CIS history rather than going for it on a foot or a handful of inches. What's your thought process?
My rule is third and within 2. You should be going for it pretty much every situation. This one being a little bit tougher. Obviously, there's some extenuating circumstances. You're in the last minute of a national title game. You've got a historically good kicker. I mean, you're thinking this is automatic points at this point, but on the other hand, you convert that third down, and I mean, you get a yard at the line of scrimmage. So you should convert that third down 100% of the time.
Jim.
The way Mac's offense was rolling, you know, if I was in Steph's shoes, I would have been tempted to go for it. But also knowing in the back of your mind, you're not getting the spots all day, maybe you take the safe play there. And Tyler Krapina has won football games before with that toe.
I don't think that kick was going to be made anyway. It came out really low. Like, Gerard breaks through the line, and it hits him in the stomach. That's how low it was. Granted, he was pretty deep in the backfield, but like that trajectory, I don't even know if it would have cleared the line without the penetration.
You know with a single that you tie, right, in that situation. And if you go back to the 2011 Vanier Cup with his wide field goal attempt at the end of regulation, he didn't get that thing deep enough. There was even with the returner a flinch where he was going to punt the thing out of the end zone, but then realized all he had was 12 yards to run the thing out of the end zone. Yeah. So in the back of his mind, if he's driving that low, and there was a significant swirling wind going against him, you know that he was trying to drive the thing long and then just really shanked the thing.
Andrew, let's include you on the conversation here. If you're Steph Potasic, do you leave the offense on the field?
Well, I mean, we spoke to Marshall Ferguson on your radio show, Ryan, on Saturday night, right after the game, and I was really surprised that we got him. And it was awesome that we did because, I mean, just such a devastating loss for Marshall. But he was very candid about that, and I asked him, you know, what were you thinking in that moment? Were you thinking, this is our boy, I mean, this guy's done it before. I mean, he's kicked a field goal in a CFL preseason game. I know it's maybe not quite the same pressure, but that's the pros. And I said to him, did you think that we got this? You know, like Tyler's going to be able to nail this. And Marshall said he did. He said he was down on one knee, and he thought, you know, more than anything, that Krapina could put it through. I mean, obviously, hindsight's 20/20 now. I personally, I don't know. I'm kind of torn with it. I mean, at the same time, this is the greatest CIS field goal kicker in history. I mean, to think that he was going to shank it, I mean, that would be probably the furthest thing on my mind, really. But yeah, I mean, you know, hindsight's 20/20, like I said. Should they have gone for it? Maybe, but they didn't.
While talking to Marshall, he mentioned the handshake at the end of the game. They were waiting 4 or 5 minutes for the Montreal Caravan to even come over. They're debating going inside. What is your thought process there? Win or lose, does sportsmanship not prevail?
Well, absolutely. And I think one of the best points that Marshall made when he was speaking to us was he compared it to the NHL. I mean, you go through a 7-game series in the NHL, and the first thing you do within 30 seconds of winning or losing that series is you get out to center ice and you shake hands. And I know the whole moment and everything was just probably overwhelming for all the Caravans and the coaching staff and everything else. But Danny Machocha should have rallied his boys up and said, look, let's get the handshakes done right away. Let's do the right sportsmanship thing to do, and then let's celebrate. But instead, they kind of let the moment grab a hold of them. And I don't think it was anything personal. I just think they were really overwhelmed by the whole moment. But it definitely did cheese off the McMaster Marauders. But one of the best things, though, that Marshall did say to us was after they actually did get in line and shook hands, and him and Gabriel Cousineau had a real nice conversation between the two of them and just kind of congratulated each other, and that kind of summed the whole thing up. I mean, you don't want bad blood at the end of that game, not in a game like that. That was one of the better Vanier Cups, in my opinion, in the history of the Vanier Cup, and to have something like that maybe, I don't know, ruin it would have been kind of stupid. So it was good that they finally did get it together.
You're right on the mark there, Andrew. And the one question I kind of have watching this scene is, where is a CIS official telling these guys, hey, like, you gotta go do the handshakes now? Because, I mean, it's tough for someone to stop and have that moment of clarity when you've just won a championship and all the emotions that are rushing through you. It's tough for someone to stop and go, oh, hey, wait a second, we gotta go shake these guys' hands. You know, stop the party, right? And I mean, most teams manage, so I'm not taking the blame entirely off of Montreal's shoulders, but I was really curious as to why somebody from the CIS sooner at least, I don't know if they ended up doing it in the end, but sooner at least didn't go over to Montreal and say, hey guys, like, we're on national TV right now and they're showing McMaster standing there watching you guys celebrate.
Well, you touched on something very important in this whole Vanier Cup, and that was organization. And a lot of the organization was left in the hands of the Montreal Alouettes, and I think Steph Patazic used it as a rallying cry for his team, because they were not treated like they should have been at a national championship in terms of the lack of shuttles, in terms of the poor management of practice time, in terms of having to shovel your own field. You're in a national championship and you're shoveling your own field to clear it because there's no equipment there. That is absolute nonsense. And there's a number of other things too. I mean, a CIS team shouldn't be going to a hotel and having to pay $52 for a dinner for one of your kids in the buffet line. And then when they try to bring food in from outside, they couldn't do it. CIS teams don't have that sort of budget. How they got roped into something like that is beyond me. And the organization behind the scenes of this Vanier Cup, and trust me, I know how hard it is to organize one of these things because I was part of organizing 2011. But in terms of the organization of this, it was awful on a number of accounts.
I don't understand how you get caught with your pants down when it snows in Montreal pushing December. Like, it's not like this was surprising. It's almost unfathomable that they weren't prepared for such a situation.
Mm-hmm. It's a national championship. It's an absolute shame that those things have to happen.
Now, Jim, Andrew and I were on the West Coast, and we got to attend the Grey Cup. You were over in Montreal. I got to attend the Vanier. Leading up to the Grey Cup, there wasn't a lot of hoopla throughout the city, not a lot of publicity. Do you find that it was different, the atmosphere leading up to the game in Montreal?
Well, I think with a home team in the Vanier Cup, there was a lot of media surrounding it in terms of producing media in the French newspapers. I was talking to Richard Boutin about it, and they brought him down from Quebec, and his paper was producing anywhere between 4 to 6 pages at the front end of the sports section for it. So the media was generating a lot, but there wasn't necessarily a fan fest or a Vanier Cup week. There wasn't a feeling in the streets that something was going on. And as good as that crowd was, I'm still disappointed that it wasn't a sellout. You know, I know the Alouettes, when they expanded their facility from 20 to 25,000, haven't sold it out since they've expanded the facility. But I thought this would be a surefire sellout with the local team in it, and they managed to get around 22. But you could see high in the corners and in patches throughout the stadium that it wasn't completely sold out.
Gord, what caught your eye in the Vanier?
Just a well-played game, fairly clean by Canadian football standards these days. You know, two good teams going at it, and you know, I just think that, I mean, McMaster ended up outgaining Montreal in the end, and I think that unfortunately turnovers killed him, and like I mentioned earlier, stalling in the red zone killed him, and that made the difference. I don't think Montreal turned the ball over once, did they? I don't think they did. So, you know, and McMaster turned the ball over 4 times. You know, and that's conservatively, that's a 14-point swing right there.
Yeah. That's what we were talking about in the scouts room. Yeah. Is that how are they still ahead in the final minutes of this game with 4 turnovers? They should consider themselves lucky. And, you know, 4 turnovers, even if you're not turning it over in the final few minutes, they eventually catch up to you.
Yeah, now we've touched on the action on the field. We've touched on the atmosphere outside the stadium. Andrew, you picked up on some interesting things in the atmosphere in the stadium every time the camera seemed to pan to the crowd.
I mean, okay, first of all, I want to say props to the Montreal fans because, you know, the Carabins fan base, I said it on the show, they might be one of the most passionate in the CIS, and they like to show it when the camera gets on them. I've seen it in RCQ games on the Radio Canada throughout the year as well. They like to give the flip the bird, let's say, to the camera every time it comes around. But again, you know, they're just having fun. You know, maybe a few of those Budweisers are going down a little too quickly out there. I know that Jim was saying that Budweiser sponsored those big blue trapper hats. That, by the way, Jim, you were supposed to bring me one of those back, and you didn't. But
we're working on it.
But yeah, you know, I mean, you know, they like to show their pride. Maybe it was a #1 they were giving. It was just maybe with the wrong digit.
French #1.
Yeah, lost in translation there. Why don't we do the quick hits? 30 seconds or less. A story from not just the Vanier, perhaps, but anything.
Well, you know, I mean, after all the you know, the good that was the game with the Vanier 50. Let's be realistic about things here. They didn't have the venue sorted out until I think it was late spring last year. That just can't happen. Where's the game going to be next year? You got to ride this momentum. And I mean, they're starting to they got some good momentum with the media coverage, like Jim was saying, in Quebec. But okay, so where are they going from here? So CIS, I know organization really isn't your forte, but it's time to get this together. Get the 51st sorted now. And in my opinion, it's got to be in Ontario, Atlantic Canada, or the West.
Jim.
I'll make it a really quick hit after that. Interlocking games, lots of talk about it in terms of grouping a number of teams together, hopefully with maybe some sort of push towards television. Let's put some action to this talk. You know, that's the one thing that's missing from the CIS right now is action with all the talk. If you want to sit around and wait for a football summit sometime in the middle of summer, you're going to lose another opportunity. Get on it now.
Gord, take us home.
Sure, I'll try. I want to say that where does the CIS go from here? And I think that this was a great Vanier Cup, a great showcase for the CIS, and now we need a follow-up great showcase for the CIS. We talked about that on Saturday night a little bit. Back in 2011, we had such a great game. It was in Vancouver, had a ton of fans at it because it was double with the Grey Cup, and then the next year, the rematch couldn't live up to the hype, and then the next year was a snoozer. And then we just kind of faded into the background again. So hopefully for the CIS's sake, we can be sitting here at the same time next year talking about what a great game that was, and we can just pick up momentum here and gain some steam, particularly as the CFL spins its wheels in terms of game quality. And the last thing I want to say is congratulations to Andrew Buckley of the Calgary Dinos for winning the Heck Crichton Trophy. Ginger Power, my friend.
Yeah, and the Russ Jackson.
Yes.
First guy to pull off the deuce.
Very nice. And you know, we're looking for a great follow-up showcase. You're going to get one because throughout the off-season, once a month, Krown Countdown U will be in your TV listings. Make sure to check that out. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, of course, as well. For Jim Mullen on the far side, Gord Randall in the middle, Andrew Wadden way off wherever he is in Richmond, BC. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to everyone at Shaw TV over here on the West Coast and all of our syndicates across the country. And thank you to David Dubé at Saskatchewan for supporting this show, Krown Produce getting in there as well. I'm Ryan Sullivan. Once again, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you again in 2015.
Thanks for watching Krown Countdown U. Now, let's get out to the game.